Ave Maria.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brethren, I reckon that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory to come that will be revealed in us. For the eager longing of creation awaits the revelation of the sons of God. For creation was made subject to vanity, not by its own will, but by reason of him who made it subject, in hope, because creation itself also will be delivered from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the sons of God. For we know that all creation groans and travails in pain until now. And not only it, but we ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we ourselves groan within us, awaiting for the adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies, in Christ Jesus our Lord. Today we celebrate the feast of St. Marcellinus and Peter, and we know very little about them. Yet we can be certain of one thing: they had great influence in the early church. And we know this because their names are inscribed in the Roman canon. And the saints who are there are those who had made a great contribution to the church. Yet we're talking about 1900 years ago. And we shouldn't be surprised that the memory has vanished. Yet we can deduce a great deal. There is a tradition by which we are able to know some of their acts. It's very scanty, but it's there nonetheless. What do we know? Well, we know that Peter was an exorcist. We know Marcellinus was a priest. The Emperor Diocletian began with a tolerance of Christianity, and there were churches being built. But about the year 302, 353, he changed his mind and decided that the Christians had to honor, worship the pagan gods. And of course, immediately there was a problem, because they would not do so, and they were willing to die for it. And so the arrest of the Christians, the clergy as well as the laity, was ordered. And Peter was arrested, and he was put into prison awaiting trial. Now it so happened that the daughter of the head of the prison, Paulina, was possessed by a demon. And so Peter exorcised her, and she was freed of the demon. Naturally, she and her father and family, the household, were grateful for this. And so Artemius, the father, the head of the prison, he converted with his wife, with his daughter, and the rest of his household, which would include the servants as well. And so this, of course, served to enrage the emperor. But Peter was only an exorcist, so all he could do was expel the demon. The priest was called Marcellinus, and he was the one who baptized the household. And so he also was arrested, and together with Peter, they were brought to trial, and they were asked to deny Christ and to worship the pagan gods, which they refused. The emperor was well aware that the Christians were happy. They rejoiced at the opportunity to offer their lives for Christ, for what they believed. And so he gave an order in their case that their execution was to be in secret. And so the executioner took them into a forest some miles outside of Rome, and he had them to dig their own grave, which they gladly did. And he beheaded them and buried them. And so nobody knew where the grave was until sometime later. A Christian woman by the name of Priscilla, she had a dream in which she was told where the tomb was. And she went and removed the bodies and placed them in the catacombs. Now, in the meantime, years have passed, and Pope Damasus, so this would be about the year, it will be about 10, 50, 20 years, say, after their death, Pope Damasus, who was a child at the time, had in fact met the executioner. And the executioner had in fact identified the place where he had buried the bodies. And more important, the executioner himself was a convert. He became a Christian. And so this confirmed Lucilla's dream, and of course the tombs of the two martyrs. So the church inscribed their names in the canon as one of as two of the martyrs, and still remains in the canon, the Roman canon even today. So what do we learn from this? Well, a great deal, especially when we consider the gospel, the reading for the feast, which is in the letter to the Romans, as well as the gospel. St. Paul, who also died in Rome, writes, I reckon that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory to come that will be revealed in us. And this is one of the reasons why Christians are willing to die for what they believe. He tells us several things. He says, I reckon, I estimate, that the sufferings of the present time, we cannot deny the realities of the sufferings of the present time. They are varied and they are manifold. They appear in different ways. The sufferings that we have to undergo can be natural or they can be supernatural. They can be self-inflicted or they could be inflicted on us. So if we consider those that are within us, the sufferings that we undergo, essentially the fact that we cannot do the good we know that ought to be done. And the evil that we know we should avoid is the very thing that we do. And so this is perhaps the greatest sufferings that Christians have to undergo. But even when we cling to the good and try to do it, we are going to antagonize others who feel in some way that they are being reproached. Because the good that the virtuous people do is a condemnation of the evil that unbelievers do. And so St. Paul writes and says that the sufferings of the present time, so he tells us one, that is present and the present time must pass. But when the present time passes, what is left but eternity? So we are essentially looking forward to eternity. So it's not worthy, the sufferings of present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to come. So we are looking for the glory in eternity. So that's the first thing, eternity. The second thing he talks about is the glory. But what is that glory? He's going to explain to us in the following lines, the glory to come that will be revealed in us. Well, what is glory? Glory is basically public acknowledgement of our excellence. Now, we, in this present time, regard glory as the way people dress, what they possess, what they eat, the status in society. That is what the world interprets as glory. So we see the celebrities of our time, the dress, what they wear, the way they walk, the places they live, what they eat, the company they keep. That is for them glory. But for a Christian, not so. Our glory lies in our virtue, that we are honest, that we are truthful, we are compassionate, we are meek, we reflect all the virtues that Christ himself manifested. So the glory is quite contrary. But for us, in eternity, this, in fact, is what will be revealed about us. He goes on to say that it will be revealed. So if it's revealed, it means it is hidden, that we do possess it, but it's not seen. And in the case of the martyrs, for instance, their fortitude, their ability to be cheerful and to go willingly to their death, and even to dig their own graves joyfully, surely that shows us fortitude, which is admirable. It shows us perseverance, which itself is admirable, because unless we persevere to the end, we will not be saved. And so the apostle says, it will be revealed in us. So we already possess it internally, it will be made known externally, be manifested. And the glory that the saints have is essentially this, that the sufferings that they endured have been revealed, and like the wounds of soldiers in battle, they are trophies of their victory. St. Paul himself spoke of what he endured for the sake of the gospel. The number of times he was scourged, the times he was in prison, the times he was shipwrecked, and how he was hungry. All of these for him were tokens of his personal virtue. And so he says also for us. But he goes on to say, and the eager longing of creation waits the revelation of the sons of God. So he says not only us, but creation itself is looking forward for the revelation of the sons of God. That is the saints. That creation itself wants to see us exalted. Now, why us? Because the humanity, the human race, all of us, we partake of every single creature. In as much as we're spiritual, we share that in common with the angels, our intellects. In as much as we have life, bodily life, we share that with all the living creatures. And as much as we have bodies, we share that with all other bodily creatures, the inanimate creation. So we, in fact, are the summation of all of creation. And we're told that creation was made subject to vanity, not of its own will, but by reason of him who made it subject, in hope. Because creation itself will also be delivered from its slavery to corruption and into the freedom of the glory of the sons of God, which is quite a mouthful, but it contains so much for us to meditate on. What specifically? He says that the creation, as we see it, was made subject to vanity. Well, what is vanity? The preacher says, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And he goes on to speak of the various things. He says, wisdom is vanity, it's emptiness. Foolishness itself is vanity. Wealth is vanity. And he goes on to tell us all the things that are valued, that even when we possess them, we suddenly find, although we have strived all our life to possess them, it doesn't give us the satisfaction that we truly desire. And this is why he calls it vanity, or, to be more specific, emptiness, like wind. It's like, in fact, he says, it's like trying to grab the wind. So this is how creation is. Why? Not by its own will, but by reason of him who made it subject, in hope. And so now he's referring to the mercy of the justice and the mercy of God. God is just, and so he punished Adam and all of Adam's children, because we were in the loins of Adam and we partook of his rebellion. So guilt is voluntary. Adam freely chose to make himself guilty. Punishment is involuntary. That's why it hurts, because it's against our will. And so God, in his justice, punished, and the punishment was imposed on Adam, who resists it just as we do. We don't like it, But at the same time, he made it subject to hope, which is his mercy. In other words, the punishment is not forever unless we choose it, but rather there is hope that we will be relieved of this punishment. And so what happens to us, because we are the summation of all creation, also will flow onto the other creatures who are lower than us. Because, he says, creation itself will also be delivered from its slavery to corruption and to share in the freedom of glory of the sons of God. And the corruption he refers to is the fact that the good that we have, we are capable of losing it. This is what aging is about. The strength of youth is dissolved in age. And the evils that we do not yet experience suddenly become our own. And so all of the debilitation of age strikes us. But whilst that's true in the material order, it's also true, or can be true, in the spiritual. And so he says, St. Paul, saying that the spiritual, the inner man, each day is being strengthened while the outer man decays. And so the creation is attached to the outer man. Yet if the inner man increases and grows stronger, more youthful each day, then the creation itself has this hope. For we know that all creation groans and travels in pain until now. And not only it, but we ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit. We ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption as sons, namely the redemption of our body. And so the creation, as we see it, is good because God created it, yet it suffers because of Adam's sin. And so when we go back to look at the martyrs, we see that they had grasped this truth, that what we suffer is nothing compared with the glory that has been promised us if we are faithful. Sadly, Christians today, or at least those who claim to be Christians, do not see it this way any longer. And they are ready to make compromises with the world. And so we see, even as we speak, in fact, yesterday, which is called Pride Month. And so homosexuality is celebrated. And we have a Catholic president who has approved that the U.S. embassies throughout the world can display prominently on the exterior of their buildings, on flagstaffs, the gay pride flag. Catholic president. His predecessor had forbidden this, but now he has approved it. And so, what can we say? So, you're right now in the Vatican. The embassy, the U.S. embassy to the Vatican, has a huge gay flag hanging in the front of the building. And would the saints have tolerated this? I think not. They would have preferred to be cast into prison, as St. Peter was, as St. Marcellinus was. And in the case of Marcellinus, he was put into a dark prison, stripped naked, and shards of glass were scattered throughout the cell. So no matter where he moved, he could not see, he would be injured by the glass. I think we would prefer to do that 1,000 times, rather than to consent to this abomination which we are undergoing. And so we need to recognize that we are still at war. The enemy, the demons, have taken over, and they know their time is short, and so they are cursing us in all different ways. We can be certain that many of what the things we're seeing are being performed by those who are possessed. And so we need to invoke the intercession of St. Peter, the exorcist, who in his prison was able to convert pagans. Let us then ask Saints Marcellinus and Peter to intercede for us and to pray for us this day and every day throughout this month. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Santa Maria.